Hi, I'm Jo Newman. I'm here with Wiltshire Creative Connect's big interview this week, and we're talking to Viv Gordon. Hi, Viv.
Hiya.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm okay. Yeah, I'm okay. Just been lying in the garden with a book, so that was quite nice.
Oh, very nice. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
beautiful weather, isn't it?
very beautiful day. Very lucky to have a garden.
Yeah, yeah, true.
Yeah.
So how are you? How have you been? How are you finding lockdown?
So I think now I'm finding it okay. To start with, it was quite scary. Just before lockdown, I started feeling quite worried about feeling very trapped at home, and that was triggering some really old feelings to do with abuse as a child, and which most of my work is about. And so it was interesting to see some of those things surface that maybe I manage differently in my day-to-day life by sort of feeling very free and being out and about a lot and things like that. So that was quite interesting. And like a lot of freelancers, I lost all of my work within a week. And so then there was quite a big panic about work and money. And we had a big Arts Council application in that didn't get assessed. And, a lot of people are sharing those similar experiences. So there was quite a difficult period at the beginning where I was feeling very triggered, and then also everything externally was sort of falling apart. And I was really lucky to have some really good support. I had really good support from my producers and had really good support from Striker Light, who I'm an associate artist with. And we've done rebuilding, and we've been really fortunate, and got some Arts Council emergency funding, and to move forward. So everything feels a bit more stable now. And yeah, it's a roller coaster, isn't it?
Yeah. And whether you mentioned a bit about kind of how sort of surviving. Are there any kind of survival strategies that you kind of brought into place at the lockdown that, from your own experience, that you found really helpful?
Yeah, I think it was interesting to watch myself go through a bit of a journey, and to feel very triggered to start with. And then there was a sort of certain point where something sort of switched in me, and I was like, I've survived a lot worse than this. And so different things kicked in, and there's been a sort of weird familiarity about the experience, because a lot of the things that are maybe more generalized experiences now have been things that I've experienced, and a lot of other people with trauma histories and mental health needs experience a lot, isolation and anxiety and fear of the future, and the sort of hypervigilance around where we are in relation to other people, and all of those things are really quite familiar. And I started to feel like I kind of know how to do this in a way. I've been practicing this for quite a long time, and there's mixed feelings about it, because obviously a lot of those things I've worked really hard to pull myself out of as a day-to-day reality, and but also seeing how that knowledge and those skills are useful to me. So a lot of stuff about treating myself with a lot of kindness, and going gently and not expecting too much of myself. And I read this article by this academic who works a lot in disaster zones, and this was really early on, and I found it so helpful, because she said, right now, just stop and sort out the basics, and then work out how you work under these circumstances. Don't try and work how you normally work. So normally I'm working quite hard. I'd say I'd probably work more than full time, as a lot of freelancers do. And it's that sort of constant sort of hustle and pushing things forward. And it was really good to feel like it's hard to push something forward when you don't know what you're pushing, isn't it? And so that article helped me sort of step back and go, don't make any big decisions right now. take your time. She said something about sort of working out how you function under these conditions and then play to those strengths. So, for example, she said that she couldn't, when she was in those situations, in crisis situations, she can't write. So obviously writing's a big part of her job. And she said that she's learned to sort of document and then write when she's feels safe, you know, which makes perfect sense. So I sort of took a lot from that article to just step back and give myself time and be nice to myself and attend to the feelings that were going on and accept that they were rapidly changing, that everything was rapidly changing, and that my sensitivities were higher than normal. And so, you know, in that, needing to be a bit more mindful about how I was relating to the people in my household and all of that stuff, just to, take it one step at a time, be a very present moment. You know, there was a long time where I was very overwhelmed when I was thinking about the future at all. That's still the case, and probably the case for lots of us. But, you know, there was a period of time where that wasn't possible at all, where I couldn't watch the news at all. And I just had to be nice to myself about those and not push myself. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. And because it's the 2nd of June today, what would you have been doing this week in a kind of parallel universe where COVID didn't happen?
Well, I would have been performing at Salisbury Festival this Friday. So I would have been bringing my show, The Book of Joe, and that would have been the first date on a small Southwest tour of that show. And very weirdly, that show is about some woman dying of a lung condition. So it's been made with it was a commission from Bristol University working with a philosopher who lives with a terminal lung condition. And that's what we were working on now. It obviously has a completely different resonance to what it had before when we made it. And so that would be interesting to see how that plays if we decide to take that on tour again in the future. You know, we'll have to think about that, obviously. And weirdly, the other, you know, I would have just finished a tour of another show called Cutting Out that is all about holding hands. So for some reason I've made these two, you know, I would have been working on these two shows that now both of them have a completely different angle. You know, we have a completely different angle on it. Audiences will feel differently about them, and we're so we're going to have, when we revisit them, we're going to have to think really carefully about what we do with that. So that's where we'd have been waiting to hear about our Arts Council application nervously, but so at least that's one thing that's been taken off us. So now we know where we are.
And there must have been some other kind of positives for this period of time for you as an artist in your work. Any unexpected stuff that's come out?
Yeah, really unexpected. So I've let myself be really. I think I saw once it all started and once I settled into it, I've let myself see it as a sort of incubation period. And I've had a few times like that in my career where it's not been possible to push things forward, like when I had very young babies and stuff like that, where I've taken a step back from my work. And I've learned over time to see those times as a period where there can be lots of thinking and reflection and stuff like that. So that's how I've sort of approached it. And with the thing that I was talking about earlier about not sort of pushing, I've just let myself be, I suppose. And so one of the things that happened really early on was that one of my survival strategies from trauma is humor. You know, humor as a sort of safety valve. And very early on in the process, I started doing this sort of photo story thing called Geez Louise. It all started the day before lockdown. I knew what was coming. We all knew what was coming, didn't we? And I was like, I just want to see the sea. So I live about an hour from the sea. So I decided to drive myself to the sea, and I really love walking, and walking's part of my creative practice as well. And so I just took myself off for a 9-mile walk. And on the way down, I was thinking about Wilson, the football character from Castaway. And I was like, oh, maybe I need a football friend for this time, and just sort of having this weird stream of consciousness. And then I, as I often do, had this whole debate with myself about I start producing my own ideas very quickly in my head. So it's like, how would this work? And I decided that that it wasn't okay to buy a football, basically. That the idea would only work if I found a football. And then I forgot all about it. And then 6 miles into my walk, I found a football in a ditch. And all covered in, it was all full of sort of muddy water, and it had a couple of little splits in it. And so I was there for about, must have been nearly half an hour, like squeezing all the water out of it so I could put it in my bag. And I had a top in my bag that I wrapped it up in, and because it was disgusting. And then it sat in my bag for about 2 weeks, and then I decided to do something with it. And so I drew a face on it, and on her, and I called her Geez Louise, because that was the sort of feeling that I had of like, what's going on, you know. So I called her Geez Louise, and I started doing daily Facebook posts of Geez Louise. Interestingly, I was posting them on Twitter and Facebook to start with, and it just didn't run on Twitter at all. Like, no one responded. It was like this gaming. Whereas on Facebook, people just immediately sort of took to the idea. And so me and Geez Louise had a sort of 30-day adventure on Facebook where we did different things every day. And it really made me laugh every day. And the interaction made me laugh every day with, you know, people's responses. And we just had a lot of stupid banter going. We did all sorts of things. We danced to jungle music, which I really like. And I pretended I qualified as a counsellor and that she was a art therapist, and we got people to send us their pictures, and we analysed them, and just all very silly. And then at the end, I sent her off to her home country. Her narrative developed over the time, so it turned out that she wasn't from the UK, and that she'd been called back to her home country to represent them in Sofa Vision, which was another project that has been completely ridiculous that we did. I helped co-produce with Tor Theatre and Strode Theatre. We put on a Eurovision song contest alternative, and did lots of micro commissions for Somerset-based theatre artists, and that was also just a really joyful experience, and very silly. And I think from that it's really made me think about my work as well. So humour is always part of my work, but because most of my work is autobiographical work, based in my lived experience of childhood sexual abuse, the humour sort of serves a particular role in that work, and so it's definitely not at the forefront. But in other work that I've done in the past, and particularly with the community dance work that I've spent 17 years doing, humour's always been a really big part of that. And as I've stepped away from that, I've sort of wondered how that plays out. And through this experience, it's just made me reflect on my work and think, actually, as well as the autobiographical work, there has to be a place for fun and humour within my work, and that all of my work's about survivor-led practice. But you know, the point of surviving is to get to the point where you can do whatever you like, or to be able to have fun and thrive. And so I think something about this time has helped me sort of go like that with these two different parts of my practice, and to recognise that they're two sides of the same thing, and to think about going forward that you know, we're talking about doing things like putting on a festival of survivor-led work, and you know, for people to want to come to a weekend full of work by survivors, some of that work's going to have to be really good fun for it not just to be really grueling and traumatic. And so I think that's a really positive thing for me. That's maybe the most positive thing that's come out of the time, to just feel like that's all a bit more integrated in me and in my work, and have that clarity going forward, that can, what role that plays. Yeah. It's good for me because it sounds like a laugh.
That's amazing. But it sounds like there's been some really important reflections for your own practice and everything. Which, like, what's it been like? Because normally when you make a show, it will take, you know, years to get a theatre show up and running, but you've been creating work pretty quickly and putting it out there, kind of almost like a rapid response. Like, what's that felt like?
I think it's felt good, because it's one of my frustrations with making theatre is the timescales involved. And I think because my work is quite political and there's an activist side to it, and a strong interest across the, you know, mental health, social justice, and those issues that are really rapidly, thankfully, really rapidly shifting landscapes in contemporary life. And so sometimes by the time I'm touring a show, my thinking's moved on, and it's not that work isn't still valid and doesn't still have a role, because obviously not everyone's thinking like me, and that's part of the point of doing the work. But often there are things that I want to respond to more quickly, and so because of that, I've been experimenting quite a lot with spoken word over the last year or so, which has been interesting to do. And I've got a little commission from Strike a Light, Create Gloucestershire and Cheltenham festivals, where I'm making some spoken word pieces based on interviews with people in Gloucestershire, called Voices from Lockdown. So that's going to be, hoping to get the first one of those out next week. So that will already be out by the time this comes out. So
and where can people find it if they want to listen? So
Strike a Light and Create Gloucestershire, both will be putting them out through their social media, and I will as well. So I'm at Viv Gordon Co on social media, and I've got a Facebook page, Viv Gordon Company, that people can follow, and they'll all be up on there. So yeah. So that's been quite interesting, and again, that's about responding quite quickly to what's happening now. And at the moment, you know, even conversations that I was having last week feel not irrelevant, but feel like things have moved on. There's a whole new set of things to think about, and you know, this week we're all thinking about everything opening, aren't we, and what that, you know, and then by the time this goes out in a couple of weeks, we'll all be thinking about something else.
yeah, that's true.
Yeah, shops will be open and things by then, and so, you know, it's just very hard to know what's going on. So I think there is something nice about the immediacy of the work I've been doing during this time, and again, things to take from that going forward, and not to I think I'm interested in how projects can have those different elements of bits that are very immediate and bits, you know, I love making theatre shows and I love theatre, and so that's always going to be, as long as it can be part of my practice, you know, all hoping and praying that theatres reopen in some recognisable way sometime in the future. But
would
yeah.
Yeah,
I've got one in front of me, I'm doing it too. Yeah.
And and you recently become Viv Gordon Company. Is that a relatively new thing? Is that right? Or is there some, like, been some organisational development happening?
Yeah. So we have become Viv Gordon Company, which I'm a little bit funny about it being my name, actually. I don't know. We'll let you know if that changes. But that is what we've become, Viv Gordon Company. So I'm working with two producers, Kate McStraw and Molly Scarborough, and so we're Viv Gordon Company at the moment, and then we've got different artists that we're working with on different projects. And it's a really exciting thing where it's all about survivor-led arts practice, survivor-led theatre practice. And so it's looking at lots of the work I've done over the last 10 years has been about mental health, access and inclusion, and working with artists with different mental health needs. And then, so it's kind of a step on from there. It's applying all of that learning into a more specific demographic. Having said that, there are 11 million adult survivors of childhood sexual abuse in the UK, so we're not marginal by any means, marginalised but not marginal. So it's about bringing those voices forward. It's about it's about me making my own work and continuing to sort of forge practice and understand how to do that for myself. But then it's also about connecting with other survivors, survivor artists and survivor activists around the country, and thinking about how we can work together, what collectively we might want to say, how we can support each other, really trying to understand the working practices we need so that we feel safe, so that we feel that we have ownership of our own stories, and so that we can reach the millions of survivors who still are unable to talk about what's happened to them. Every time I perform, or I recently did a TEDx talk in Salisbury, and every time I speak in public about abuse, people come and talk to me afterwards, and often people sort of whisper in my ear, me too, that's my story too. And often they'll tell me that they've never told anyone, that I'm the first person they've told. And so the level of isolation and stigma and shame and secrecy that is still in our community is really overwhelmingly shocking. And so the work going forward is about using creativity and the arts and theatre to nurture voice and visibility and community. And there's an increasing number, small but increasing number, of survivors who are standing up to be seen and to be counted, and to try and break that ground, and so I feel very happy and fortunate to be in a position where I can be one of those, because I've had an awful lot of support to be able to do that, and so I don't take that lightly. I'm really grateful for that. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I guess you've spoken a bit about this already, but it would be interesting to hear a little bit more about what survivor-led practice kind of looks like as a process or a practice, or if it's something that's still evolving, because sounds like from what you're saying there's a fairly kind of small number of survivors or known survivors making work. Am I right?
Yeah, for sure. There'll be a lot of people working who aren't identifying in that way, and that's of course totally up to them. It's individual choice, and I think it's really important that everyone has that choice. For me, it's a political act to sort of position myself in that way. And survivor-led practice is any and all work that it is led by survivors, I guess. And so that could look like lots of different things. For me, because the work that I make is autobiographical, and sort of delving into my trauma and my history to be able to shine a light on the impact and the scale of abuse in the UK, then for me that looks like something quite slow and gentle, with a lot of support. So we think a lot about my access needs in the work. We're very careful with the teams that we work with, and we set up a sort of culture in the room that is as trauma informed as we can be. We never know when the stuff that we're talking about is going to touch on someone else's story on the team, or you know, whether that's a personal story or a friend or relative, or you know, so we're very careful about how we take it all forward. So there's a lot of support for me, there's a lot of support for the team, and we really think about setting up good mental health friendly practices, is what I call them. So checking in, and particularly checking in when we're working on difficult scenes, and doing a lot of debriefing and a lot of thinking. And I have therapy to do all of my work. I work with a personal assistant in the room whose sole role is to support me. And yeah, I feel very lucky to be able to do that. But you know, we're sort of mining the self, aren't we, for those stories that haven't been told, or haven't been told enough, and thankfully are starting to be told more. But in that, I'm hitting up constantly against a lifetime of conditioning that tells me I shouldn't do that. And so, you know, that's what the support is for, really, is to help me overcome that, and to manage some of the mental health symptoms that can come up for me, you know, around anxiety or dissociation and stuff like that as I work. You know, I have to keep an eye on all of those things. So I think, in terms of coming back to your question, so, you know, survivor-led practice, you know, we're still finding out, really, and that's what this new work with Viv Gordon companies is about. We're going to be doing a lot of talking with other survivor activists and survivor artists to see how they do it, and then to sort of see if there are some, because you can never generalize, can you? Because what I need will be different to what someone else needs, but maybe to be able to offer to you know, emerging survivor artists a sort of what's the word? I'm going to use the word smorgasbord, but that's I don't know, of options that they can think about in their own practice to see what works for them, because I think it's always very personal and a bit of trial and error. Yeah,
that's
yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
And sometimes as well with access needs, it's I guess more this, speaking more generally, but it's not always about knowing what you need or having the confidence to ask. So I think it's really inspiring to hear that you've kind of obviously worked hard to develop a very specific process for yourself that works for you, and then, even though that's very personal to you, other people could take inspiration and be like, oh, actually that would work for me, and yeah, I'm going to ask for that. And just knowing that those processes don't have to be fixed, like,
yeah, I think they're constantly evolving as well. So, you know, in different projects my needs are different. There's certain constants, but they're, you know, I think they're not evolving in the way that I won't need support, because I think I've kind of embraced the idea that I deserve support to do this very hard thing. You know, having survived a long time without it, now I'm like, why would I want to be without it? Whereas, you know, earlier in my life and career, I think I had the idea that if I had support for a little while, I would then not need it, or that was the aim somehow of having it. Whereas now I'm like, yeah, bring it on, I want it forever.
yeah.
Really liberating to think like that. For me personally, I think we're all so different, and so I wouldn't want to give the impression that I've got any answers or for anyone else, other than an encouragement to explore that, I suppose.
Yeah.
Explore what you need. Yeah.
It's really interesting.
I just thought another answer for you know, what does survivor-led practice look like, is sort of, you know, kick ass and angry and transformative, or yeah, I just wanted to put that in of like, because the aim is to make change. You know, that's what the work's about. It's about making change, and that's the activism of putting myself in that position, that's to make change. Yeah, so that could be another answer.
Important. And that's how your work as an activist kind of fits really beautifully with the work you make as an artist. It's kind of, they're very intrinsically linked, aren't they?
Absolutely. I mean, my activism is theatre making on the whole, you know, although I do other things. I do, you know, training and mentoring and consultancy and that sort of thing, but that all stems from, you know, having my own creative practice. And, you know, my activism is to sort of make my body and my story visible in, you know, and by speaking out and seeking to connect with people in those very difficult places. That, you know, that's the work that I do. Yeah. Yeah.
Amazing.
It's so exciting. It's a utter privilege to be able to do it. Yeah, it's not something that I ever thought I would do. And yeah, I think the social context has changed so much in the last 10 plus years that you know, since all Project Utri and all of that stuff. Operation Utri, is it? I always say it wrong. But, you know, the conversation has really shifted to, you know, before all of that, no one ever really spoke about abuse. And now we're quite used to hearing about it on the news and things like that. And although we're hearing about it in particular ways that don't always resonate with me, it sort of opens something up socially. And the other thing that's really opened up the conversation is social media, because people who don't feel safe or haven't got people that they connect with in their communities to talk about it are talking about it constantly online, which is really, really important. You know, so one of the things going forward with the new work that we're doing, before any of this started, we'd already sort of identified that and gone, everything we do, as well as having a live element, needs to have a digital element, because otherwise we're not reaching people, because lots of people don't go to theatres for lots and lots of very good reasons, you know, that we're hoping to also try and understand and seek to address. And lots of people are still very isolated, and actually the only connection they have with other survivors is through Twitter or Facebook, or, you know, so that's the you know, a strategy going forward is to always make sure that we've got that those different strands running, so that people can engage in ways that they feel safe, or, you know, we're committed to live streaming work as we go forward, so that people can watch in their support groups, or, you know, in their safe spaces, and not take the risk of coming to a show if they're not ready to do that, because I think it is risky if you're a survivor to come and see work. I know I find that, you know, if I see that a show is about that, not that I see that many shows about that and I want to see more, or is about sexual violence then of any kind, then, you know, that feels like a risk for me to go and see. And so even though that's my day to day, you know, I'm thinking about it every day, all day, not all day every day, but a lot of the day, you know. So even in that circumstance, it's still, I suppose theatre asks us to emotionally engage with things in a way that lots of other things don't. And so you know, although the work I make is for anyone and everyone to come and see, or adult audiences to come and see, you know, that desire to reach survivor audiences is really strong, but we're also aware that it's not necessarily straightforward, or that we need to think about how we can make that possible for people to engage with it. Yeah
that's really important.
Yeah, we've got a really exciting digital project happening as part of the next 6 months as well. Shall I tell you quickly about that?
Yeah.
So we've did me and the wonderful Sarah Blowers, who was my producer for a long time, walked 110 miles of the Dorset coast path in 2018 as part of a project called Restless, which is quite a slow burn project, which I quite like. But the project is all about using coastal landscapes as metaphors for survivor experiences. So there's lots of stuff about exposure and navigating difficult territory, and isolation, and survival, the survival of walking and keeping on moving forward. And then there's a whole metaphor to do with the sea and the constant restless, insistent action of the sea as a metaphor for activism, and the way that the sea is changing the landscape that seems fixed and unchangeable, in the same way that activism seeks to change a social landscape that, you know, see, like the patriarchy that seems fixed and unchangeable. So we did this walk as creative research. We had different collaborators coming to walk with us, and then we spent a couple of weeks spaced out, but a couple of weeks in total, with some dancers and rappers and a composer and a choreographer, and that, just exploring, and that was amazing. And then since then, I have written I've written several things for it, but I wrote a poem that I particularly like about walking, and one of the raps was about walking. And so now in the next 6 months we're going to put together the rap with I'm not going to rap, I need to just be totally clear with everyone. I'm 48. I'm too old for rapping, I think. Watch this space. Can you imagine, Joe? Anyway, we're putting together the rap and the spoken word with some beautiful music, and we're commissioning a animator called Lou Summery, who is an award-winning animator, and she does pencil animates pencil drawings, and so she's going to make a beautiful animation to go with the rap that's about walking, that brings in the landscape. And I'm really, that's the thing I'm most excited about in the next 6 months, is making that. And so we're definitely going to get that out by November, when there's 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. So we're going to launch with that, if not before. Yeah,
that's so cool. And will that be on your website? What's your
I think, so I've got a website, vivgordon.com, and I've got Viv Gordon Company Facebook page, which are those are the things that I update most regularly.
But Geez Louise on Instagram, like, that could be a total hit, couldn't it? That's a picture story.
Maybe. I have just applied for a thing. I don't know if I'll get it. Just a little commission to take Geez Louise into the community to do to do COVID support by visiting people in their gardens and setting up, like, them joining in with the story, basically, so setting up images and stuff, narratives with local people where I live in Somerset. So we'll see.
Yeah.
I feel certain Geez Louise is going to continue to be part of my life.
Yeah. Is she there now? Is she, can you meet her, or is she not?
I could go and get her. I'll have to disappear very briefly.
Oh no.
Oh, there she is. Hey, hello, Geez. Probably do something rude if she could.
Amazing. That's so great.
Very irreverent.
Amazing. I guess, like, just as a last little question, talking about, like, I guess for some people this has been a time for a bit more reading or listening to things or watching things, or have you had, like, a lockdown love, like a bit of inspiration or a bit of something you've really enjoyed kind of watching since you've been
I think to start with, I was just watching, like, old favourites like Gavin and Stacey and Peep Show and things like that, just like comforting old friends that weren't going to surprise me too much, and I had a bit of an issue with some of the theatre that was posted on, that I sort of felt like maybe it wasn't showing the companies in the best light. I certainly felt like I wasn't sure if I wanted to show my theatre shows online, because I mean, maybe it's just us, but we filmed them pretty basically just to send to promoters and things. But the one so I wasn't sure about all the live theatre that was being broadcast, and then I watched the Barbershop Chronicles, which I just, like, the minute it started, I felt something of that sort of, is frisson the right word, of live performance? So it's the most alive thing that I've watched, bearing in mind that I haven't watched loads, but it was the most sort of, gave me the strongest feeling of being at a theatre event where that liveness is the thing that is really exciting. And I think, I mean, it was a really great show, but also it was on, the audience were on 4 sides, and so the way it was filmed was a bit more sort of immersive than that front-on way that a lot of shows are filmed. And so, yes, something about that just made me, I had a little cry, because it reminded me how much I love theatre and how much I'm missing theatre. But also it gave me a sense of possibility that there are ways of showing work that don't have to feel sort of a bit two-dimensional when that's what we all love about theatre, isn't it? Is that intimacy, that interaction with an audience, and that aliveness that is about being together. I think that's really hard to capture, but I thought they did it really well. Yeah,
I saw that as well. I thought it was amazing. It really captured, and there was something so visceral about it, wasn't there? And so important. And
really dense with information as well, that I feel like I'd like to see it again and sort of rehear all that information, or get the script or something, because it felt like it was full of really important information, especially at this time.
Yeah, it's really inspiring, isn't it, to think that there are still ways of sharing theatre right now, and how important it is, and we can still get touched by that inspiration, and have a kind of positive hope for the future, whatever that looks like. Well, it's been so lush to talk to you, Viv. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's really lush for me to see you, Jo. Thank you for taking time with me. Lovely.
Thank you so much again, Viv, and thanks to anyone who's watched this. It's such a lovely thing. It's really nice for me to be involved with it and to chat to you, so thank you, and thanks to Wiltshire Creative for setting this all up. I think it's really fantastic to have this opportunity to connect with artists and people during lockdown, so thanks, big thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.